Let's talk about Mike Uremovich. Let's talk about him moving to Ball State. Let's talk about Mike New getting out of here. Which, by the way, I guess before we talk about Uremovich, let's talk a little bit about Mike New. He was there for 9 years. Okay, we've said this many times about the state of Ball State as a program, right? What is the expectation, right? I mean, they've won one bowl game in 30 years, and they did it under Mike New. Okay, you've had one coach in the last 30 years come out of Ball State with a winning record. Okay, that includes Brady Hoke. So when you ask yourself, hey, who's actually winning here, right? The answer is no one. Okay. So Mike New gets canned, but the reality is, like, you have these boosters, right, that are donating money. They're not donating money to the Ball State program to go 4-8, right? To go 3-9, right? They want to make bowl games. They want to compete for conference championships. Ball State is in the bottom half of the MAC, all right, in terms of program resources, program history, right? And until recently, I mean, you would have put Ohio in that category until, like, the last however many years that they've been pretty solid here. But overall, this program, being in Indiana, geography doesn't help very much because there just is better talent in the state of Illinois and better talent in the state of Ohio. There's a lot of negatives that are going on for this program that don't put coaches often in a good position to win, right? So Mike New gets canned. And it's not even that he did a terrible job. I mean, I'm sure Ball State fans are like, oh, this guy sucks. But it's like, you look at some of these guys, yeah, like Pete Lembo was good for you. He came out of there with a winning record. Maybe it didn't end the way that you wanted it to. Brady Hook was awesome for, I guess, 2 years, but he also had a 2-9 season in there as well. Bill Lynch was terrible. I mean, you just have not had good coaches at all. So Uremovich comes in here, okay, and this is the state of this program is not necessarily fantastic. You have conference realignment happening soon. Northern Illinois on the exit, who is historically one of the most dominant teams in this conference, at least in the last 10, 15 years, right? And in comes UMass, who arguably, as you pointed out to me off air, has a lot more resources than some of these other MAC schools, including Ball State. So kind of an eye for an eye right there, kind of a net zero game right there. But I like Uremovich as a coach. I do. And when we're going to talk about him, we're going to talk about it in a positive light. And when we give our grades, we're also going to do these relative to the expectations for Ball State, or at least what Ball State fans we believe should expect. Not that we're going to tell Ball State fans what they should expect, right? But maybe what our idea of Ball State fans should probably expect.
Yes, so Ball State getting that, they've only played it in 9 bowl games in their entire, history, right? Which seems extraordinarily low. Now the reality is when they were having their better seasons, right?
It's more than
Paul
Indiana.
Shudell,
in that same state.
Paul Shudell, Dwight Wallace, Dave McClain, some of these like better coaches for Ball State in their history, there were a lot less bowl games, and so being bowl eligible did not mean you automatically were going to make a bowl or get invited to a bowl. A lot of that was the MAC ties you had to certain bowl games that were not fantastic, or not a ton of bowl games lining up to take MAC schools. So it sucks, right? But the reality is, we think, maybe Uremovich has a chance to do that. And let's talk about him a little bit. So he's coming up from Butler. And the interesting thing about Butler is there's a lot of connection between the two programs. So Muncie to Indianapolis is about 55 miles away from each other, right? So not too far away. So Uremovich is going up to Ball State, and Ball State's, Kevin Lynch is going down to Butler. So Kevin Lynch was the offensive coordinator for Ball State this past season. He's heading back down to Butler to be their head coach to take over for Mike Uremovich. Kevin Lynch has a lot of family history at Butler. His dad, Bill Lynch, is a guy that coached a lot at Butler, at Ball State, Indiana, DePaul. A lot of Indiana ties there. Yeah, so it's obviously a lot of things going on there, but it's just interesting. It's a little factor I thought I'd throw in there. But yeah, so Uremovich was at Butler. He was a guy that honestly, turned them into a pretty solid school in the Pioneer League. 3 straight winning seasons in 2021, 2022, they were pretty damn good offensively. And then in 23 and 24, they got even better and better. And that's what Uremovich will be doing. He will be calling plays for this Ball State program. And what he's done there, he's had experience at NIU, which means he understands the MAC. Back when NIU was there in 2018, they won a championship there, MAC championship, which is obviously the goal, the end goal if you're Ball State. Obviously, maybe not the expectation, but the reality is he's had that kind of championship, stuff. He's also born in Gary, Indiana, which is freaking awesome, having the ties to the state there. And then most of his coaching career has been in that Midwest, obviously with Butler too, not far, knows the recruiting ground, knows the high schools, all that kind of stuff. And he signed, a 5-year contract. The details have not been made public yet about what he's making, but New was making about $700K in his 9th year at Ball State. So I would expect something maybe a little bit less than that, especially if you're getting a guy from the FCS. You can save a little money on that, which leads you to have more money to put into your coaching staff there and some other resources, hopefully, that Ball State is able to address and invest in to give Uremovich a chance to succeed in the MAC when you've got other schools, like you said, like UMass and other schools, NIU, who's obviously leaving soon, but they're getting more and more, investments into that program, and some other schools too that you're just kind of falling behind. And the reality is you're expecting your coaches and you're paying them at a C, D tier rate, but you're not giving them resources to win at a B rate. So obviously, just because you pay someone more doesn't mean they're going to make more money, but it also does help to have those kind of resources to go out and get things that are necessities for your programs to get good and stay good.
Yeah, and us saying this doesn't mean that Ball State can't win, right? We've seen schools all over the country with interesting geography, right? Build their way up to become, sort of powerhouses within their respective conferences or divisions or what have you. So this isn't to say that Ball State, and by the way, Ohio, how many years was Ohio terrible, right? And then they realized like, oh wait, we're like right there in Ohio and Pennsylvania and West Virginia. Yeah, we're kind of in a recruiting gold mine right there. Let's just capitalize on that. So I guess what is Mike Uremovich, CD? What does he need to do to win at Ball State when other coaches have failed?
Well, you have to build like elite staffs, right? And so
You do.
you've
You
seen
have to.
coaches honestly have success there, relative to Ball State, right? So Pete Lembo, fucking fantastic coach, and that. Excuse my language. I just get fired up talking about Pete Lembo. We love him on the show. If you're in the MAC, you know exactly how good he is for you. If you're a Ball State fan listening, you remember those days, back in, what was it, 2012, 2013, taking you to those bowl games, the Beef O'Brady's Bowl, the GoDaddy's Bowl, iconic bowls of the early 2010s, right? We love that there. But yeah, and then you also have Brady Hoke too, who, again, like, say what you want about him and what he did at Michigan and the end of the years at San Diego State, but the reality is, like, he was a pretty damn good coach for Ball State to have, for sure. So you have to hit on Uremovich, and he has to hit on his staff too. So I would love to get into the staff here, and kind of go through it. So it's going to be a lot. There's about 10, 12 coaches I'll be talking about, 10, 12 staff members I'll be talking about. The interesting thing here is, so a lot of the ways that coaching staffs are traditionally broken down in these, um, programs in college football is you get 10 assistant coaches, and you usually have 5 on offense, 5 on defense, and then special teams coordinator, and then your strength and conditioning and all that kind of stuff. That's like different than just your actual on the field assistants. So a lot of times it works is you have an OC who also kind of coaches a position, then you have 4 other position groups, and you have a DC, defense coordinator, who also coaches a position group, and then you have, 4 other assistant position coaches. But the interesting thing is, so Uremovich, like I said, he's going to be calling plays for you. He's going to be the offensive coordinator, which gives you a 5th staff member to kind of play around with on just position coaches for this team. So you've got quarterback coach, right, who's going to be also the pass game coordinator, and Chris Harmon. He's been with Uremovich for a while now. He was with him at Temple, with him at NIU. He also knows the Midwest area. He's been recently coaching high school football in Illinois and Chicago area at Batavia and Bennett Academy. The offensive line coach is going to be Alex Barr. He played for Uremovich at NC State. He played for him, which is awesome. He also coached at his alma mater there at NC State. The last few seasons has been at Butler with Uremovich, and they have been running the ball very, very well there. They averaged over 200 yards a game last season, which is fantastic. The running backs coach, he's a guy, a little bit newer name. Madison Bunch is He was at Southeastern Missouri as the RB coach there. He's been at Rutgers as well. He also coached wide receivers in his past as well. Not a ton of connection there with Uremovich, but the reality is he wanted him and he got him. Tight end coach is going to be Sean Chase. He coached with Uremovich at Butler. He also worked with him at NIU as well, so he's familiar with the MAC like Uremovich is as well. And this is where it gets interesting. You have two different wide receiver coaches, excuse me. You've got an inside receivers coach, which is going to be Ray Holmes. He was the receiving coach at Butler. He also coached at NIU and Temple, with Uremovich. So this is program number 4 that Uremovich and Holmes are going to be going together with, coaching wide receivers. And then the wide receivers coach, like the outside wide receiver coach, is going to be Shaq Van. He was the wide receiver coach at Ball State this past season. So that kind of works out great. So not only does Uremovich get his guy in Ray Holmes, who's been in with him for a long time, but the wide receivers coach who is current on the staff, who was on Ball State's, this past season, who coached Malcolm Gilly, Cam Pickett, a couple of very good receivers, productive receivers in the MAC for you. One of the best parts about your team this past season, the bright spots, that wide receiver room, he gets to stay on staff, kind of build that continuity, continue that growth as it was from 2024. Shaq Van also coached back in 2023 with Washington as their graduate assistant for the wide receivers. And we all know how good those wide receivers were in that room. Obviously, a lot of other very good coaches on that coaching staff. I get that for Washington, but he was there with those. And obviously that kind of translated into his success this past season at Ball State with Malcolm Gilly and Cam Pickett.
I'd say like on the offensive side of the ball, and I guess because Uremovich, he's more of an offensive guy, you'd say. I like continuity, right? You started with Lance Leipold, right? When he went up in the ranks, he just retained continuity, right? When you have your coaching staff that is all aligned, right, and people that in the building that are, pushing the culture, right, and the play style that your team is akin to, when you have an identity like that, particularly in the MAC, right, you're going to have success. So you can do that. So if I'm going to be optimistic about this, offensive coaching staff, it's going to be that this coaching staff, a lot of these guys are coming from Butler. Now, obviously, you have, a couple different pieces here. There, it's inevitable that you're going to have some turnover, right? But I like that he's kept a lot of pieces from his days at Butler, or guys that he's coached with before.
Without a doubt. You said that too. Also helps when you're going out on the recruiting trail. You don't have to waste time. We talked about it in our previous videos, how
They all know.
big of a whirlwind. They know exactly what they're looking for on the recruiting trail. And also like schematically, culture-wise, you don't have to install to 10,
And the high
12.
school coaches in Illinois, the high school coaches in Indiana,
Yep.
Western Ohio, like you have those connections there in the staff, which is huge. That is so big. That is so big.
And I love, and you will see this the rest of today as we go through this recording, when we get into Central Michigan staff, when we get into Temple staff, the connection between the offensive coordinator and offensive line coach, to me, is so pivotal in getting guys doing the things that you want to be doing and getting things culturally, mentality-wise, all that kind of stuff. And obviously, the OC is going to be Uremovich, right? And his connection is to the O-line coach, Alex Barr, who played for him at NC State, right? So you have that kind of, bond there, and has also been with him at Butler, having success there too. I love that. I absolutely love that. Getting the defensive side of the ball, right? So this is a little different because Uremovich is an offensive guy. So when you're looking at these offensive coaches, when you see these OCs or you see these offensive, minded head coaches get hired, a lot of times the defensive side of the ball, those almost are like more pivotal because you almost trust Uremovich to get his side of the ball right. And he has to make fantastic hires on the defense side of the ball to be able to trust guys and give them freedom to go out and succeed. And when he doesn't really have as much say on the defensive side of the ball. So starting with the defensive coordinator, it's going to be Jeff Knowles, right? So he was on Ball State staff in 2024, but he does have familiarity there with Uremovich. They worked together at a couple stops, right? So Butler, St. Francis, NIU, and also Temple. The reality is that defense for Ball State needs to be better. They were, bottom 2 in the MAC?
In scoring defense, yeah.
Yeah.
Bottom 2 in the bottom 3 in the country.
So I get that you had a lot of, new faces on the defense side of the ball, but the reality is like it needs to be a lot better. Was it 40 points per game just about like 175 yards on the ground, 280 in the air. It's ugly. Not to say that it won't get better or not. I think it will help too if you have a consistent offense, right, that is running the ball very, very well and consistently. It can help your defense put yourself in better spots. But complementary football is very important. But the reality is Jeff Knowles knows he needs to be better, and I think Uremovich trusts him to do that. The D-line coach is also going to dub as the defensive run game coordinator, Adam Sawicki. He was the DC for Uremovich at Butler back in 2014. They were damn good, right? They were fourth in the FCS, only allowing 16 points per game in that season in 2024. It's fantastic. The cornerbacks coach, who's also going to be the passing game coordinator, is Ray Smith. He was at Kennesaw and Southeastern Missouri. He was a first team All-MAC at DB back at NIU. So there's that little connection there between Uremovich and Ray Smith from NIU and in the MAC as well when he played there. Safeties coach is going to be Roy Mannering. So he was the defensive coordinator at DePaul and Denison, right? DePaul in Indiana there. He's also a very good recruiter for them. He has, like I said, ties to Indianapolis, to Indiana, to Chicago suburbs, right? So those are big spots for you if you're Ball State, where you're going to be making your money in terms of recruiting spots. Your snipers coach, your snipers is going to be kind of this hybrid between your linebackers and your big nickels, your big safeties. So guys that are athletic can play in space, work in the box, kind of like big slots, big nickels, rovers, whatever you want to call them. So Jalen Moss is going to be that guy. He was been at Butler for 3 years. He coached cornerbacks there. He's also worked a ton in the state of Indiana as well, at Butler, at Indiana State, also St. Francis. He played there, and now will be at Ball State there. So I love the continuity on the defense side of the ball. A lot of ties with Uremovich at Butler, also ties to the state of Indiana. Things you love to see.
Yeah, and when you're looking at the roster turnover this year, if you want to talk about trying to improve those sides of the football, I would anticipate the defensive side of the football actually improving more because there was significant roster turnover, at least so far on that side of the ball. Plus, I mean, it can't get much worse, right? I mean, you were what, bottom 15 schedule in the country in terms of strength of schedule, and you gave up the third most points in the entire country, right? That's not good, okay? And you don't get to play yourself, right? Offensively, I didn't think that they were that bad, right? Like relative to like some of the years that they've had there at Ball State, or relative to some of the other back like teams. But Simons is gone, like Cam Pickett's gone, Pemberton's gone, right? You got your offensive tackle's gone, your tight end is gone, your entire offense is gone, right? So Mike Uremovich, honestly, he's not going to be working with that much. There's a lot of new faces in there, guys that necessarily haven't proven productivity at this level. So it is going to be very interesting to see what kind of offense that Uremovich can muster up. That's what I'm going to be looking for in 2025 for Ball State. What does their offense look like? Right? Because I'm anticipating their defense somewhat getting a little bit better because it has to, just mathematically, it has to, right?
You
But who
think
knows?
so? And switching to the third phase of the football, special teams coordinator is going to be Nick Fiacable, Fiacable, something like that. I'm so sorry for butchering that, but he was a special teams analyst at UConn this past season. He's actually from Indiana as well, so the connection, those deep roots to the state there, I think are fantastic. The connection between Uremovich and Coach Nick is going to be at UConn's Doug Scherer. He was a guy that coached Uremovich a couple years ago back at NC State. So there's that little connection there. And then the special teams coach is going to be TJ Greenstone. He's been at Butler for, I think, he was there for 7 years or something like that. So he was been with Uremovich before, knows exactly what he wants in his players and all that kind of good stuff. So again, that continuity there, like I said, it's a whirlwind of a first offseason to have some of those familiar faces, guys that know what you're looking for, can save you some time and give you a chance to win in season one when all that stuff is going on, especially with the roster turnover and everything else you're dealing with in 2025 of college football. Just gives you chances there. So overall, honestly, I think the staff is super interesting. Now, obviously, like it still remains to be seen how these guys are going to fare at Ball State, how they're going to gel together, if they're going to be able to assemble talent, to be able to win in the MAC and all that kind of good stuff. How long is it going to take for them to really be able to play their kind of football on both sides of the ball? But I think early optimism on paper, I think this is a solid staff, especially with the resources you're dealing with too. Like you can't just go out and pluck guys from Power 4 here and there and give yourself chances, in these big name hires, these splashy hires, but I kind of love some grit and some grind, especially guys who have ties to the state of Indiana. I just think that's so important at Ball State, because if you're going to be doing that, if you're going to be living in Muncie, right, you got to love that stuff, and you got to love the state, you got to love the university, and honestly, I think they've got a couple guys there that are going to fit that mold and give them a chance to win some football games.
Continuity and fit. Those are your most important things. And I think we don't know about fit just yet, or even how like Mike Uremovich is going to fit at this Ball State program. I'm thinking that he's going to be pretty fine here, right? He knows what he's doing. Like you talked about earlier, he's been in the MAC, okay? He knows how to coach in the MAC, right? He's coached offense. He's coached MAC championship offenses in the MAC. He knows how to win games. When I'm looking at the expectations here, and I don't know whether you'll agree with me or not. You may disagree with me, and that's totally fine. But my expectations at Ball State, okay, are, say you have a 9-year stint, like the Mike New, like that's my expectation. All right. You make it 8 or 9 years as a coach there, and you make it to like 2 bowl games. Hell, if you win one, which has only been done once in their program history, I mean, the expectation to me is, make it to a bowl game, maybe every 3 years, 4 years, right? It's not going to be that frequent. All right. There's going to be like little spikes. Okay. And then you're going to see, your team gets poached in transfer portal every 3-4 years, right? You should have a pretty decent roster. It's stacking losing seasons that, kind of becomes an issue there. But that's kind of the reality of what it is as a program. And if he ends up doing really well at Ball State, gets hired somewhere else, I think he will have exceeded my expectations. So for that reason, I think that he's going to have a pretty okay career there at Ball State. He'll take him to some bowl games every now and then, every 3-4 years or whatever. You may have a pocket in there of success. I think it's going to be tough to win here. I'll give it a B because, honestly, in terms of fit, I like it a lot. I like his staff. Like you talked about, continuity and fit. The reality is, that's my expectation for Ball State. It's not very high, right? That's why I think he can meet those expectations.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I think if this were to become a successful tenure, like if you last 9 years at any place, that's got to be considered a success. Now, obviously, I think, Mike New and someone like would have loved it to end a little bit better than it did, but they also won 7 games once, right? 7-1, right? When they played that mostly MAC schedule. And then I think it was all MAC schedule, I'm pretty sure. And then, Mike, you finished it up with another 6-win season the year after. So, like you said, those little spurts, if you can collect some group of talent, every couple years and put yourself in a chance, to go to a bowl game, that's fantastic. That'll keep you there. Excuse me. That'll buy you plenty of time because the floor will bottom out, right, at times. It's going to in college football in 2025. Do you have a good enough staff to raise that floor? We've seen the floor bottom out plenty of times the past couple decades at Ball State. You're looking at 2 and 10-digit, or excuse me, double-digit losses. It's never what you want to see if you're Ball State. Put yourself in a spot so you aren't finishing last in your conference in your down years, right? Give yourself a chance. And yeah, honestly, I'll give it a B- here. Like I said, I do worry this is a really tough place to win. I know Butler was a good program. I trust Uremovich, I think, and it sounds like he put together good staff. I just think this is really a hard place to win, especially with the future of the MAC. You've got a couple programs that are really, really rolling right now, and trying to crack into that top there could be pretty tough. You have a couple auto losses on your schedule every year, plus with the way the portal is going, and those next couple years, I think could be pretty shaky in terms of roster retention. Once we do get into, I think, a little bit safer spot, maybe you can see this thing start to even out and steady out if you don't have guys that are getting poked every year, your best players. But for now, I'll go B-. I feel pretty safe about that. That's a little conservative, but you know what? I think I feel pretty good about that.